Welcome to the 2021 Shorewood Voters Forum, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kay Bergenier, and I am president of the Shorewood Women's Club. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters who will facilitate this forum, and for our two members who have worked very hard to assure that our technology platforms work correctly. We're sorry we can't meet in person and share some refreshments as we have in the past. Hopefully we will be able to do so in the future. And now just a few words about our organization. The Shorewood Women's Club has been active in Shorewood for 85 years. And although our early membership of 400 women, which we had in the 1940s, has decreased significantly, we are still a strong and active group. Club members are extremely generous with their time, talents, and treasure. And in addition to hosting a wide range of excellent speakers monthly for our meetings, our group tries to help the Shorewood community in various ways. Besides funding 3 college scholarships annually, each year members collect school supplies for needy children and donate to numerous local and national organizations. Recently, we raised over $1,500 for Heifer International and contributed to the USO and River West Food Pantry. We've just completed a basket for the upcoming seed auction, and we're planning a drive for the organization Exploit No More in April. As members of our national organization, the General Federation of Women's Clubs, we regularly try to be involved in community service programs, and thus we are most happy to host this afternoon's forum. Thank you.
Welcome to the candidate forums for the Shorewood Village President, Village Trustee, and the Shorewood School Board. And thanks so much to our sponsor, the Shorewood Women's Club. My name is Kay Vance. I will be your forum moderator this afternoon. I'm going to give you just a few minutes about the League of Women Voters, a little bit about voting, and a little bit about the process we're going to use. The League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization that promotes informed and active participation in government. As a nonpartisan group, the League never endorses a political party or candidate. It is important to be an educated voter, so we thank you so much for taking the time to learn about the candidates. The election will be held April 6th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and with proper documentation, you may still register when you go to vote. You may cast an in-person absentee ballot at the Village Center. It's at the Village Center this year due to COVID reasons from March 23rd to April 2nd. So absentee ballots is at the Village Center this year. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. until 5 p.m. April 2nd. So from March 23rd to April 2nd at the Village Center and until 5 p.m. on April 2nd. The last day to request an absentee ballot is April 1st by 5 p.m. A white drop box for absentee ballots is located in the Village Hall parking lot. The last pickup will be 8 p.m. on election night. Voters will be required to show a photo ID in order to vote. Information on voting and elections can be found at vote411.org. That's a website put on by the League of Women Voters, and you can view your sample ballot, information on your candidates, and detailed questions and answer section. The Q&A section will allow you to directly compare the candidates. The other website that is important and will give you a lot of information is myvote.wi.gov. We want your vote to count, so please let us know if you have questions or ask your village clerk or look it up at either 411.org or myvote.wi.gov. We also welcome you to join the League of Women Voters, which despite its name also includes many men. The League was formed over 100 years ago after the ratification of the 19th Amendment granting women the right to vote. The League was formed to educate women on voting matters and to encourage them to exercise their newly won franchise. Our mission of education of voters is unchanged, but we keep the name to honor our founders, and now our efforts are directed at all citizens, not just women. Questions for this candidates forum were submitted prior to the forum by voters in the Shorewood community. So thanks to everyone who took the time to provide questions. There were very many well thought out questions. We had numerous submissions, but we had too many to present in the time allotted. And so whenever possible, we combined some of the questions. Your candidate forum will be live streamed in its entirety and available for viewing on the Shorewood Women's Club Facebook and after March 3rd on the vote411.org site. So as we've said before, tonight we're going to be presenting 3 forums. Our first forum is for Shorewood Village Trustee. The 3 candidates seeking election for Village Trustee are vying for 2 positions. On the ballot are Lindsay Maruszewski, Jim Arndorfer, and Ms. Melissa Moore Baldauff. And I will be using the first names as we determined prior to the forum. I'm going to repeat this part again. We will begin with 60-second opening statements from each candidate, followed by the questions with 90 seconds allowed for each answer. Then we will end with 60-second closing remarks. And we have drawn the lots ahead of time. So the orders will be, first question will be rotated between the candidates. You will see a slide indicating when you have 30 seconds left to speak, 15 seconds left to speak, and when you must stop. Please honor the guidelines of the forum, and I'm sure you will, so we may make the best use of our time and this forum opportunity. We will begin with opening statements for the trustee candidacy. Again, there's 3 candidates vying for 2 openings, and Lindsay is going to go first with her opening statement. In 60 seconds or less, share your opening statement.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Maruszewski. I'm running for trustee. I just wanted to take a second to thank everybody for attending today and for hosting today and giving us an opportunity to talk to everyone, even if it's only in a recording that they can check out later. It's been a struggle to connect during the pandemic, and this is really a great opportunity. I've lived in Shorewood for over 16 years. I worked as a bookkeeper for 15 years. I have worked in the school district. I've been a part of this community for my entire adult life, and I really look forward to the opportunity to serve in an even greater capacity. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Jim, you are going to go second with your opening statement.
All right. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the Shorewood Women's Club and the League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County for hosting today's forum. I've been a fan of these over the years. That said, I never really anticipated or had any burning desire to appear as a candidate. That is until last fall's village budget meeting. Village politics have been described as divisive. I think that would be an understatement to describe that particular meeting, which saw 2 timeouts declared in the span of a few minutes. I decided that I would make a run because I was hoping to help make a change. I did so as a parent with 2 kids in the district, as someone who's been deeply involved and cares about this community, as someone who has professional skills and experience that I think could be of benefit. We have a fantastic village here, but we have real challenges. We need a board that can work together to deal with these challenges, a board that listens to all residents so that we can move forward together. And I'm running to be a part of that solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, you're next with your opening statement.
Hi, everyone. Again, would echo what the other candidates said so far. Thank you to the Shorewood Women's Club, the League of Women Voters for hosting, to the other candidates participating today, everyone watching and listening today or in the future. I'm running for village board to give back to the community that welcomed me and my kids when we moved here a few years ago from Madison. We relocated, leaving an abusive home. I've since remarried, purchased a home here in Shorewood with my husband, I spent 18 months working as Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Evers, and today we're all thriving with the support of this great school and community and our friends here. And I think that what drew me to Shorewood should be accessible to everyone. Right now, homeownership is out of reach for many Shorewood families, and even prices a lot of people out of rentals. We need to make housing more affordable and accessible, but that's not enough to make it a great place to raise a family or start a business. We need to take steps to dismantle systems of racism and white supremacy so everyone feels welcome and included. And that's what I'm looking to do here, is promote a great community and make it accessible to everyone.
Thank you. Jim, you will get the first question. And the first question is, what are the most pressing current issues facing Shorewood? And what do you foresee to be the most pressing future issues?
I'd say there are three issues. First and foremost, equity. We learned that last summer, we have a long way to go as a country and as a village. I think there's been some good progress made since then by the village. Sam Coleman is conducting an equity audit of the village's policies, procedures, and ordinances. I can't wait to see the output of that. And, I'm encouraged to see that the police department is looking to incorporate some of the recommendations from the police organization study. And so the thing now, there's good work being done. The thing now is that we got to keep progress. We got to make sure that we maintain momentum. Second, affordability. We're an expensive village. We're going to probably continue to be an expensive village. We got to find ways to mitigate that. I think affordable housing is one way, controlling costs is another. With regard to affordable housing, that's a means of attracting new residents, as well as providing opportunities for current residents who may be looking to leave their home but want to remain in the community. And finally, it's about maintaining quality of life. People in this village care about services. You can see it in surveys. You can see it in social media comments about snow removal. The question is, how do you balance that with the costs that people can afford and bear? And also, I think we need to continue to focus on smart development so that we can expand our tax base so that we're not so dependent on property taxes, and bring amenities that appeal to all residents of our village. Thank you.
Okay. Melissa, the first question, I'll just repeat it. What are the most pressing current issues facing Shorewood, and what do you foresee to be the most pressing future issues?
Well, I think the most pressing current issue facing Shorewood is the same one that's everyone is facing, and that is going to be our continued response to the COVID-19 crisis. I think that is something that is deeply affecting everyone. It's affected our quality of life. It's affected our relationships. We're having this virtually instead of in person. It's changed how we're interacting with our businesses, with schools, with our local governments. So I think that's going to be the most pressing issue, is how are we, supporting our community? How are we supporting our families? How are we supporting kids? How are we supporting teachers? How are we supporting public employees? They have been unsung heroes throughout this crisis when you think about not just our public health officials, but the people who are keeping the roads plowed, our utility workers, sanitation workers. So that, I think, is going to be very front and center as we move forward. I also think that really not just addressing the issues that face Shorewood particularly, but thinking about how we are advancing our entire region. We are not in a vacuum here in Shorewood. And I think that we need to, yes, of course, focus on things like affordability of housing here in Shorewood. We need to be thinking about sustainable development that's really rooted in community. But I think we need to be thinking bigger about how Shorewood can be a partner to the rest of the Milwaukee community to make sure that not just Shorewood, but the entire region is thriving.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, would you like me to repeat the question?
Nope, thanks.
Okay.
I would say the two most pressing issues, in my opinion, are really, they always go hand in hand. Everything needs to be viewed through an equity lens. I think we've seen that come to a head, but it's always been an issue here in Shorewood. And you can't talk about equity without talking about money. And that then comes down to taxes and housing, and they are intrinsically wrapped together. You can't do one without the other. You can't support your community in an equitable way without supporting them financially in an equitable way. It's all the same thing. As far as as far as future issues, I really feel like Shorewood is at a crossroads. The last year specifically has brought a lot of things to the fore in a lot of communities. And I think what Shorewood really needs to think about at this point is who it wants to be going forward. It really celebrated itself as a progressive community over time, but that sort of peaked, I feel like, a while ago. Having been here 20 years, I've certainly seen some changes myself. So I feel like when we talk about where we want to go from here, it's a lot about the nitty gritty of taxes and services, but it's also who we want to be viewed as a village. And we need to decide what we want the rest of the world to think of us.
Thank you. Melissa, you're going to go first with the second question. It's a thought-provoking question. So, can you provide an example of a time you provided leadership during a crisis and how that experience will inform your response as a village trustee to the current health crisis and to other crises which may arise in Shorewood?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that. So recently, I served as Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Tony Evers, and that included managing the state's COVID response and communications, up until last summer when I left my position. So that also included the decision making of starting the process, just about a year ago, of how do we communicate intentionally with the community to prepare them for what is coming. That included, having the orders to start limiting gatherings, to close schools, to issue a safer at home order. And, I think that it's important when you're talking about these really big issues, but also smaller issues as well, that you're listening to people, that you are being intentional about inclusivity and seeking meaningful input that is actionable from diverse stakeholders, even and especially people who might disagree with you, but really taking the time to listen. As a leader, I think that you need to listen a lot more than you talk, because you want to make sure that you're getting the right perspective from everybody, not just the people who are going to, maybe validate what you had already come to a conclusion on. And you want to really think through the, intentional and unintentional consequences of a big and important decision, and make sure that everyone's represented, everyone's at the table, and everyone has an opportunity to have a say in the outcome.
Okay. Lindsay, you have, you need to turn your mic on and you can take the second question now. I'm going to repeat it once. Can you provide an example of a time you provided leadership during a crisis and how that experience will inform your response as a village trustee to the current health crisis and other crises which may arise?
I don't want to give the impression that I am not giving this question the seriousness it deserves. I am answering in all seriousness, but you're going to think it's funny. I was a playground supervisor for the school system for 6 years, and it was one constant crisis after another. For an hour and a half every single day, 5 days a week, it was just crises. And I have always prided myself on being the kind of person who never panics, but it really gets tested in an atmosphere that is moving at 100 miles an hour when everything is going wrong all the time, because it's 500 kids who all need things. What it really taught me was the ability to slow down internally and think through a thing while it's happening. It showed me the value of gathering the people you trust around you, my coworkers at the time, and getting all of the input from the people who knew a thing best, making sure that you were utilizing all of the tools you had accessible to you, and illustrating quickly what was missing, what tools didn't we have in that crisis that we needed, that needs to be addressed immediately before it ever happens again. It was a lot of thinking on your feet and staying calm, and it's something that I utilize still in my daily life. It was really, really useful. And I think it would be useful going forward in any situation.
Okay, thank you. Jim, question number 2. Would you like me to read it?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. So back last March, I was tapped to be part of a task force that was charged with coordinating my employer's response to the COVID pandemic across North America. I would say our first real crisis hit on a Saturday morning. I got a text saying that we had our first confirmed case in one of our facilities. This person had been exposed outside, but they were on site for a while before leaving showing symptoms. So it was my job to create the communication strategy that would let everyone know what had happened, as well as what we were doing to keep them safe. So I spent the rest of that day checking and triple checking to make sure that, how we followed our safety procedures, how were we following our cleaning procedures, was our contact tracing solid? Did we know for sure who this person may or may not have come into contact with? Worked with a ton of people across the organization, pulled this thing together. The next day, we pushed it out, and I spent a good amount of that day working with the on-site HR folks and support people to field questions. It was a pretty crazy 48 hours. I think the things I learned the most from that would have been, the importance of acting with urgency, of collaborating, of being transparent. It was essential that we get this communication right to people so that we could maintain confidence, that they could feel that they were safe, and we were able to pull that off by collaborating and working together. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're up to question 3, and Lindsay is the first one up for question 3, which is a short one. How will you maintain communication, I'd say effective communication, with Shorewood residents?
I've actually been thinking about this one a lot. In order to sort of bone up on all the information that I want to have at my fingertips while we go through this campaign, I want to be able to talk to everybody about anything they want to talk about. I've had to visit numerous Facebook pages and go read survey results and talk to my neighbors and pour over some old Shorewood Today issues and look over the ripples that the kids bring home. And I am struggling. I will admit I struggle to answer that question because there are a lot of people out there who get their information from the Facebook pages, and that's a really great place to get information sent out. But not everybody's online, and even people who are online, not everybody's on social media, and that has to be respected. Mailings are fine, I guess, but I think what's most important is creating a central place for people to get in touch. There has to be either, maybe just a phone number, an email, somebody who's actually dedicated to getting information and questions to the representatives so that they can stay on top of those things. So it's something that I've been thinking about, and I think we have to keep considering. I'm not sure I can give you a pat answer right here.
Okay. Jim, you're up for question 3.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. How will you maintain effective communication with Shorewood residents?
Okay, thank you. So my background is as a reporter and as a communications director. The thing I've learned in my experience is that there's more great things going on in organizations than the people that are involved in the day-to-day work understand. So I would take it, if I were to be a trustee, I would be making sure that I'm reaching out to people to understand what's going on. What's the bid doing, for instance, to help struggling businesses? What are there any things we can do to help the NSHD in terms of informing people about what are the opportunities for vaccination, things like that. I think there's a lot of great stories going on in this village. I agree on the challenge of channels and how we connect with people. I do think there's some opportunity with social media that we haven't explored in terms of more regular updates, in terms of more engaging content. I think there's an opportunity for greater collaboration with the schools. I think there's greater opportunity for collaboration with other entities across the district. And honestly, I'm open to ideas from people in terms of how we can get the word out better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, number 3.
Yes, I think that, I agree with Jim. We have similar professional backgrounds. And although was never a reporter, I worked with a lot of them though, and still do. But I think that it is great to tell the wonderful stories about Shorewood and everything that's happening in our community. But to me, this question is more about how can I listen as an elected official? And I think that's just so important to have platforms for people to be able to communicate with their representatives. So I think that's, making sure that people have access to email, to a phone number to contact their elected officials. Once we get, further along in our progress of getting everyone vaccinated and getting things back to some semblance of normalcy in a, potentially post-COVID world, I think that office hours are a really great way to make yourself accessible to people. Just kind of sitting outside Village Hall for an hour or two periodically and let people come in and have a chat with you. I think it's just so important to have people know that their representatives in office are accessible, that they are listening, that they care about what the community has to say, and that they're taking that to heart, as they make decisions. I think we're all guided by our shared values, and people want to, have a chance to have those conversations.
Okay, thank you. Jim, you get first crack at question number 4. It is, what do you see as Shorewood's fiscal challenges and how would you work to address them?
Well, that's the big question, right? I've been a homeowner for the past 15 years. I understand, taxes and what it means to be a taxpayer in this community. A few thoughts on this. One, I think we need to look to control and manage costs. Professionally, I have extensive experience in terms of managing budgets and handling budget tasks. I think that is an experience that would help here. 2, I think smart development, emphasis on smart development is critical to expanding our tax base so that we're not so dependent on property taxes. And by development, I think, affordable housing is a potential opportunity, both for new residents as well as for current residents looking for options, as well as bringing in more amenities. I do think post-COVID, we have to reevaluate what our financial priorities are. We've learned some things are maybe not as important as we thought, while other things are more important. So I think we need to reevaluate our spending through that lens. And again, to repeat what I said earlier, I'm very open to ideas from people in the community, our business owners, our community members. There's a lot of ideas out there. I think it would be ideal to find a way to bring people together to find solutions for these really very real challenges we face. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Melissa, question number 4. What do you see as Shorewood's fiscal challenges and how would you work to address them?
I think that, we need to start from a place of, budgets are moral documents, and we need to make sure that we are making the correct investments in our priorities here in Shorewood. I think that includes, an examination of taxes and fees through an equity lens. We want to make sure that we are not trying to, fee our way to fiscal stability. We want to make sure that we are not being regressive in terms of what we are using as fees to help fund our government. I think that we also need to take this as an opportunity to, again, think about the fact that Shorewood is not operating in a vacuum. We need to ensure that the entire Milwaukee community is thriving, not just Shorewood. And I think that is an area where we can really partner with other communities in the Milwaukee area to ensure that all local governments are getting their fair share of resources from the state and from the federal government. I think that Milwaukee County has an opportunity to really come together and voice support for President Biden's American Rescue Plan, to lobby the state to get more dollars, more of our tax dollars back here in our community, and to make sure that we, again, have a chance to ensure the entire region is thriving.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, question 4.
I think first and foremost, what probably has to be addressed is housing in Shorewood. We want our taxes to go to the services that we need, but we're starting to tax a lot of families out of the area, and they have roots here. You don't have to be a homeowner to have roots here. I've never owned a home in Shorewood, lived here off and on for 20 years. But I intend to stay. I have kids in the school. So the housing market matters a lot to me, including rentals and availability of affordable housing. I think that's really got to be first and foremost. After that, I think what we really need as far as our finances are concerned is a lot more transparency. There are aspects to things we've done in the recent and further back financially that a lot of the village just doesn't really understand what happened. And it's really hard to get a straight answer. I take spending other people's money extremely seriously. I was a bookkeeper for 15 years, and where every penny goes matters, but it also matters that everybody understands where it went and why. And we are not doing a good job of making sure that everybody that pays into the tax base, homeowners and renters, understands where that money is going and why.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, you're going to get first crack at question number 5, which is kind of a follow-up question. Do you support user fees, in particular for parking meters, wheel tax, leaf pickup, curbside not bagged? So what is your opinion on user fees?
I think that user fees can certainly serve the correct function, but I think that we need to have an examination of what those fees are, how much they are they pricing, people out of participating in a certain thing? Are they creating a new fee that is not fair, that it is has a regressive impact? I think there just needs to be a much greater conversation on what the fees are, what the intended use of those fees are. Kind of, is the juice worth the squeeze? We don't want to nickel and dime people who are already paying a lot to live in this community. So I think that kind of comes back to a little bit of the conversation about, how to make sure we're getting our fair share of tax dollars from state and federal government, so that we aren't having to squeeze our neighbors when it comes to, the costs that they pay to live in Shorewood. I think that, again, looking through that equity lens, what are the consequences, intended and unintended? Is it going to be a parking ticket for somebody? It's maybe, $25 becomes $50 when you don't have the money because you haven't gotten paid yet. What's the consequence of that? And I think we need to be really intentional about kind of gaming out all of the consequences for something. If it snowballs and has a really detrimental impact on somebody, that's not going to be who we are as a community and where we want to go.
Okay. Jim, you have second crack at that question.
Thank you. I would echo a lot of what Melissa had to say. You can promise a lot with fees. Fees might be presented as a solution, but there could also be a ton of unintended consequences with those. We do pay a lot to be here. I would, any fee plan, I would want to subject to pretty intensive scrutiny to understand what we're trying to accomplish. But in general, I have concerns about equity as far as fees, as far as the use of fees go, and I would have to see and understand the plan in terms of what we were trying to execute and what we were trying to accomplish. Thank you.
Okay. Melissa?
I think it's actually.
I already
my
went. I
answer.
think you mean Lindsay.
Lindsay. Lindsay.
I think user fees probably have to be, you know what? I was going to say they have to be a last resort kind of thing, but what I actually think is they would have to be, that would definitely have to be the kind of thing that's brought to every villager. That would need to be voted on for sure. We need to know how everybody feels about that. But I'm not even sure then that we could apply that equitably, because our businesses all along our main streets are people by employees that don't live here. And there's an excellent chance that those are the areas that would bear the brunt of those fees, which means that we are then taxing people. We're asking people to pay fees that already come in here to serve the community without living in it. And that seems incredibly unfair. I mean, as far as services specific to residents like leaf removal and snow removal and things like that, it probably really needs to be discussed among the village. I don't think that's the kind of thing that we could make a decision on without putting it out to the people. That affects every single person that lives here and everybody that works here. And I feel like we would need to talk to them about that.
Okay. Jim, you get this one next. And this is maybe.
Excuse me, Kay. Kay, does this
think
one
I
start
screwed
with, does this one start with Lindsay, Kay?
It does start with Lindsay, and it starts with number 6. So Lindsay is first on this one. Are you in favor of limiting taxes and potentially reducing service levels? Or do you support higher taxes and continuing or increasing service levels? Can you give an example of a service you think needs more spending or one that can be cut? I think because that's kind of a complex question, I'm just going to read it once more. Are you in favor of limiting taxes and potentially reducing service levels? Or do you support higher taxes and continuing or increasing service levels? Can you give an example of a service you think could be cut or one that you think needs more spending? And thank you for clarifying the order.
Okay, I kind of hate this question. I feel like, and it's not, you know, it comes up a lot. Do you want to raise taxes and raise services, or lower taxes and lower services? And it makes it sound very black and white, as if it's only the one thing or the other. And what I always think of when I hear this is those of us that were here long enough ago remember when our taxes paid for sidewalk plows. Boy, do I miss the sidewalk plows. So, I mean, depending on what services you're looking at, we've seen taxes skyrocket while services plummet if the sidewalk plows were your big thing. Some services probably need to be revisited. We have really a boutique experience when it comes to our DPW. If your recycling blows over, you can call the DPW and they will send a guy out to clean it up for you. That's great, and it feels good, and it's a wonderful service to have them really just Johnny on the spot for anything we need anytime, but we do pay for that. You know, there are many communities that just chip in a fee every year for their snow removal, but here we really expect that to be covered and handled immediately every single time. And I'm not saying that that's not a great thing, but you pay for that. So it is virtually impossible to just say, well, yeah, higher taxes, more stuff, because that's not actually how it works. Higher taxes doesn't necessarily get you more services, sidewalk plows. And I can't say things like, yes, we should cut taxes, but then no services, because that's obviously nobody wants to live in a community that doesn't have anything to offer. That's an incredibly complicated question. And it really, again, comes down to what people are willing to pay for. And you have to talk to the village about that. We need to touch the villagers on that.
Okay. Jim, you get that one. You get the incredibly complicated question, and it is.
I'll try to navigate the best I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, I mean, that's the eternal balance, right? How do you balance services people want with what they're able to afford or willing to pay? And it's something that involves creativity. We hear a lot about sharing services as an option. I mean, there are limits to what we can do with that. I think, yes, it needs to be part of a broader conversation involving community members about what is important for this community. We do things that a lot of communities don't. And should we look at that differently? I mean, I think it's great that that people on alleys don't, have to pay for renovating those alleys, but other communities do it differently. I think we should keep it the way it is. But that's, people might have different opinions on that. I think that, we have to do a deep dive, as I said earlier, look at our budget through a post-COVID lens and see what our priorities need to be moving forward as a village. Thank you.
Okay. Melissa, the last one on question 6, would you like me to repeat it?
No, that's okay. I can jump into it. I agree with what both Jim and Lindsay said about this being a decision that is made, in consultation with the people of Shorewood. This is something where, we're going to get the best decision when we get, input from informed, engaged residents and members of this community about what their priorities are. That's something that I've seen working on budgets at the state level and at the county level, having those really informed conversations with people. In Milwaukee County, we had a tool called Balancing Act, where people could try their own hand at balancing the budget. And we did listening sessions around that too, where people could do that in real time and have conversations and ask questions. If we reduce spending here so we can increase spending here, what does that actually mean? What does that get for us? Same thing happened at the state level when we had conversations around the budget about what those trade-offs actually meant. And I think that it's important to engage, not only elected officials, but village staff in those conversations, the people who are actually the experts in how the village operates, and making sure they're a part of those conversations with residents as well. And then the other part of that question about, what could be cut or what should be increased. I'll own the fact that I am certainly not an expert on Shorewood's budget, and I have a lot to learn. But one guess I'm going to make is that there probably are reductions that we could make in some areas of the budget. I would say the police budget is something I would want to look at. I think there are a lot of ways that it could be right-sized. What are the functions that police is doing that really shouldn't be a police function, that should be another area where government is serving?
Okay, thank you. Now we have time for one more question. After we go through this last question, then there will be closing statements. So Jim, you get the first crack at this question, which is, developers are lining up to build in Shorewood, and they would like to receive tax incremental financing. What types of projects, if any, would merit a public subsidy in your view?
That's a great question. Well, let me back up. I mean, I know enough about TIFs to be dangerous. That's an area, I think, like many people, I was surprised to learn that you can, extend a TIF for a year and get a windfall for, affordable housing, which I think is a huge, great opportunity. In terms of what projects would merit a TIF, first and foremost, it has to be something that we couldn't accomplish through other means. We can't just throw money at developers. It has to be a case where this is something that wouldn't happen unless, the community stepped up. And beyond that, I mean, we have to make sure that this project would, definitely add to our, tax base, that it would serve a real function. And, I would want to make sure that any development that in which we participate would be green as well. It's a big question, and it also will depend on a case-by-case basis as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
Great question. I think that when it comes to investing public dollars, it's really about considering, what is the public benefit to such a project. But I also think that we need to be thinking in terms of, what are lasting and sustainable investments in our community, because, we've all seen, turnover along Oakland. We want to make sure that if we are investing in a business, that it's going to stick around, that it's going to have roots in this community. I also think that it's important to consider the values that any kind of developer is bringing to their project and to the community. So that is ensuring that they, are committed to, clean energy standards, that they are committed to paying a living wage of, $15 an hour or more to their workers, that they're going to be treating their workers with respect and dignity. And I think that also something that the village needs to really keep at the forefront of the decision-making process when it comes to making investments of public dollars is, again, looking through that equity lens, like, how are we supporting small businesses that are owned by women, people of color, and LGBTQ entrepreneurs? And I think those are some of the factors to consider. And I also think it is a conversation to have with the people of the village. What kinds of investments do they want to see us making with their tax dollars?
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, this is the TIF tax incremental financing question, and you have the last answer.
I'm just going to say it. I am pretty, at this point, anti-developers that are lined up for our interest. I think some of the most recent projects have really scarred the relationship between the board and the villagers in a way that needs to be addressed pretty soon before we start jumping into more developments. Shorewood has a perception problem. They really do. And it's in any number of fields. We have a perception problem when it comes to race. We have a perception problem when it comes to money, but we also have a perception problem when it comes to the relationship between the board and the villagers. We set ourselves limits for things like facade grants, but then we blow that out of the water, ostensibly because they're local and they're part of the community, but then they were gone and now we have to fill that spot again. And a lot of people get upset about that stuff. And I feel like, especially post-COVID, this is the time where we need to draw back from big development deals. We need to take a minute to take a look at the finances and what kind of finances we're going to have and what the village is going to look like post-COVID and what deals we've made that people don't understand already. I keep saying it's literally the only facet of my life where I am considered conservative in any way. But when it comes to spending more money through the village to build more things, I really feel like it's time to just take a break. We need to stop and think.
Okay. And speaking of stopping, we're going to move on to the closing statements for this forum.
Okay,
Yes,
wait, Kay,
yes,
can I interrupt for a second?
sure.
Let's go ahead and squeeze in one more question,
Oh, all right.
but let's just take a minute for the answer instead of 90 seconds, okay? I think we can squeeze in one more if we just do a
Okay.
minute.
We have plenty of questions.
answer.
No problem.
Okay.
All right, then it would be Lindsay, I believe. And the question is, well, it's pretty similar to the second one. So I think I'm going to go to skip 8 and go to 9.
That's fine.
The board has completed 3 important planning studies in the past year. One on transportation and parking, one on the DPW, and one on the police department. Please choose one or more significant conclusions from any of these studies and tell us how you would address each. So this one starts with Lindsay.
We get to talk about one of my favorite things.
Oh,
I have
good.
read the police study cover to cover. And it gave a lot of really interesting information. A lot of it was not a surprise. My concern with it is that some of it will give the village the opportunity to sort of go, see, it's not as bad as we thought. But what I think is the most important thing, and I don't know who all has read the entire study, we should. The most important thing that stands out when you do is that it's a lot of hard numbers, but there is absolutely no way to determine the quality of the things that have been measured. So the number of stops by race, the number of arrests by race, doesn't actually give any indication of the way that we are treating people when we make those stops in the village. Which is why what I would really like to see first and foremost is appropriate training so that we can use the body cam footage that we have to determine how we are treating the people who come into this village or live in this village and then are interacting with our police department. On top of that, I definitely need to see some social workers on the staff there.
Okay. Jim, would you like to take a crack at it? You're next, Jim.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you. I'll go with the police organization study as well. You know, the police play a crucial role in preventing crime and making everyone in this community feel safe. That's not the case. I mean, the study showed that that is not the case for all of our residents, and the stat that jumped out to me more than any other was that Black residents of the village are 3.6 times more likely to be arrested than white ones. We need to change that. You know, like I said, I'm encouraged that the police are taking some steps, including, you know, improving the complaint process, including better collection of data related to traffic stops to get at some of the things that Lindsay was talking about. And, you know, also looking to engage in more robust interaction with the community, which is super important. I think other opportunities include, you know, an equity audit of the department, totally grant social workers, you know, finding ways to increase the diversity of the department, and finding a more robust role for the police commission in terms of supervision and public engagement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
I also will talk about the policing study, and, you know, agree with what both Jim and Lindsay said. I think that, you know, it's really important to consider this a first step and it's a beginning, because there's a lot more we need to do to understand why Black and brown people are being over policed in our community and how we are stopping it. We cannot expect Black families, business owners to want to invest in our community and be a part of this community when they can't trust that they aren't going to be safe from harm at the hands of our government. I think that there needs to be a lot more work to increase transparency and accountability, because we know that, you know, bad cops are harmful to good cops too. I think that there needs to be a more robust method of submitting complaints, getting information about investigations, and having, again, just more accountability. But I think the most important thing is considering this a first step and not the end of the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. I'm just checking, are we still doing 60-second closings?
Let's go, that'll be fine.
Okay, all right, Jim, you're the first candidate to give a closing statement. So you have 67 seconds to give a closing statement.
All right. Well, I want to thank our hosts for an excellent forum, and thank everyone who took the time to watch, submit questions, and participate. This is today a special anniversary for me. It was 15 years ago that I moved up from Chicago to return to my hometown to take a job with a small craft brewer called Miller Brewing Company. For the first month or so, I stayed with my folks who live in Washington Heights. I got to sleep in my own room, in fact, which was interesting. And then on weekends, my wife Paula and our then 3-year-old son Andrew would come up, and we'd go around looking for a house. We looked at a lot of communities. Shorewood is the one that felt like home, and here we are, and it's exceeded our expectations. You know, and you know, we're a small village. There's not many degrees of separation between any of us. So I just want to thank everyone here for being great neighbors and friends. And, you know, you've made an impact on our lives one way or another, even if you don't know it. So thank you, and have a great Sunday.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, your closing statement?
Also want to thank everyone for participating today. This is my second one of these forums, and I think it's just a really great opportunity to have some conversations about, you know, the issues we're all thinking about, and, you know, learn from the other candidates. It's really been interesting. Although, of course, I know we all wish we could be in person, but Zooms are our way of life for now. I also would just want to say, I spent the majority of my career working in public service at the municipal, county, and state level. I've helped to design and implement initiatives like the Milwaukee County Office on African American Affairs and the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change, chaired by Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. I've experienced firsthand that good government matters and it has the power to improve people's lives. With this experience, my established relationships at all levels of Wisconsin government, and my ability to listen and encourage conversation, I believe I can be an effective voice for all of Shorewood and all that Shorewood can be on the village board. And I hope to earn your vote on or before April 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes, I think I got you all for closing. Yes.
No, you
That-
didn't get Lindsay.
No,
Lindsay, I didn't get Lindsay. Lindsay, last but not least, sorry.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for doing this. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for hosting. It's so awkward to try to do this during COVID. So this is great. I am excited about the prospect of being able to represent Shorewood on the village board. I really am. I have been devoted to this community for so long, and I feel very strongly what really made me run was that for a very long time, there's a huge portion of the village that isn't being represented the way it needs to be. I feel like there are a lot of demographics that feel left out when it comes to village issues and the village board. And I really want to be a representative for everybody that feels like part of the other in the village. And I feel like I could do a good job of that because I am very often the other. This has been great and I really appreciate it. I hope everybody has a good weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that concludes the village trustee portion of our forum event this afternoon. Thank you in the community for giving us so many really good questions, and we didn't even get to half of them. And thank you to all our candidates for participating in the forum and for running for office of village trustee. Thank you to Mr. Jim Arndorfer, Ms. Lindsay Maruszewski, and Ms. Melissa Moore Baldauff. We will pause for a moment before we move on to the Shorewood Village President Candidate Forum. We will now begin our second candidate forum, the forum for Shorewood Village President. We have two candidates seeking election for Village President. On the ballot are Ms. Jessica Carpenter, Ms. Ann McKaig. I'm going to be calling the candidates by their first name as we've agreed to in the beginning of the debate of the forum. So Jessica will be the first to give an opening statement, and Anne will be the second, and then we'll alternate. Questions for this candidate forum were submitted prior to the forum by voters in the Shorewood community. Our format will be the same as our previous forum. We will begin with 60-second opening statements, 90 seconds allowed to answer each question, and then we will end with 60-second closing remarks. We will alternate which candidate answers the questions first. You will see a slide indicating when you have 30, well, it's actually a sign held up, but we can call it a slide, indicating when you have 30 seconds left and when you have 15 seconds left and when you must stop. Please honor the guidelines for the forum so we may make the best use of our time and this forum opportunity. Let's begin with opening statements. As I said, Jessica will go first with her 60-second or less opening statement.
May I begin?
Yep.
Gosh, waiting in the wings is always a little bit nerve-wracking. So I wanted to thank the Shorewood Women's Club and the League of Women Voters for organizing this opportunity to connect with residents, especially right now, is wonderful. So thank you. My family moved to Shorewood when my daughter was just 2, and we felt at home in this village right away. We wanted a walkable community, and we knew that this was a special place. Our expectations have been far surpassed. There are so many great things about Shorewood, our beautiful buildings and our homes, our historic charm, our walkability. But what I really love most about Shorewood are the people. The neighbors in our village treat each other like family, and our engaged residents are passionate about our future. I'm excited to be running for village president because I have loved serving on the village board for the past 3 years. I'm hopeful you will give me the opportunity to continue to serve this village, which has provided me so much. I look forward to everyone's questions this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, Anne, your turn. You need your mic on.
Thank you. Well, we got that out of the way. Okay.
Okay. Happens to everybody.
It does. I'm Ann McKaig, and as you know, I'm running for president of the village board. I'm excited to join you today. Thank you to our host, League of Women Voters and Shorewood Women's Club, and to my fellow candidate, Jessica Carpenter. I learned a lot about the League of Women Voters over the past 2 years with my work with Youth Justice Milwaukee, and your commitment to equity and voter access is inspiring. I never knew about it, so thank you. I'm running for a village board president because I want the next village board to be in the strongest position to build on accomplishments, to take on challenges, and to create opportunities. I have 30 years of experience leading diverse groups of stakeholders and individuals for the sake of the common good. Most recently in my full-time role as strategic project director for youth justice reform. As president, I will set a positive tone for the work ahead, engage strengths, talents, and voices of many. You can learn all about me on my website, McKaigforshorewood.com, my Facebook page, and my LinkedIn profile. Please reach out with any additional questions you have.
Okay, because there's just 2 of you, you also get the first question now. What is the single biggest concern for Shorewood over the next 3 years, and then also over the next 10 years?
Oh, I get it?
Yes, you can.
Oh.
Yeah, because it was 2 of you, so.
All right. Did I eat up my time already? Okay, 3 years?
Yeah, what is the single biggest concern for Shorewood over the next 3 years, and then also over the next 10 years?
That's great. So the next 3 years, I think, as village president, I mean, the biggest item is to restore the function of the board. We've really gone through a rocky time. We need to re-empower our citizen committees. We need to build on the strengths and the talents and the voices of many, which is part of our organizational structure. And I have a lot of experience doing that. We also need to, I'm really good at telling people what they need to know, not necessarily what they want to hear. And I really look forward to bringing that to our conversations, to reconcile these disagreements over taxes versus services, around economic development, around partnerships, and really to regain the strong partnerships that have gotten us this far. We have a lot of accomplishments that we need to build on. We have recent studies that need to be operationalized. And so for the next 3 years, that's what I would focus on, and I would expect us to focus on. For the next 10 years, we really need to think about using the material within the content of those recent studies to reset our long-range plans and to carefully consider possible service redesigns that we need to do to meet our fiscal restraints. And I'm going to stop there.
Okay. Jessica?
Thank you.
You want me to repeat it?
I think I'm okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Okay. So in the next 3 years, I see our immediate focus is, excuse me, is unifying our village. We have allowed our political discourse to become very divisive, and that is something that I really pride myself on, my ability to listen to others and to bring our community together. I really believe that it is okay to disagree. In fact, I think it's really important, but I really believe that it is how we civilly disagree that is of utmost importance. So that is one of the things I would like to tackle first and foremost. The next thing I would like for us to look at in the first 3 years, or in the next couple of years, is diversity and equity. We have, and that runs through multiple facets. So that is with, in relation to our police study, I would like to implement many of the recommendations from the police study. But it's also in relation to housing. We also completed a housing study. We have many things that need to be implemented from that housing study. We have an opportunity for some affordable housing actually tomorrow. And I think we have some opportunities to look at some ways that we can keep Shorewood affordable. In 10 years, the things that I think we need to focus on are ways that we can support our aging infrastructure as well as our shared services options. Thank you.
Okay. Anne?
I answered this question.
Your question is number 2. What do you believe were the most significant accomplishments of the previous board and board president? And what would you want to see the board accomplish in the next term?
I think the most significant accomplishments were convincing the board to invest in these studies. And I admit that I had to learn the value of that, because studies can be deceiving, right? So it's all what you do with them. And so I really liked serving on the board that I was on, because I got the advantage of hearing so many different perspectives. And I think I really grew as a leader, and I grew as an advocate. So what was the second half of the question?
What would you want to see the board accomplish in the next term?
Oh, yeah, in the next term, I would expect that we would accomplish immediate next steps around the recent studies, to Trustee Carpenter's point, the policing study. And with that is going to be a really honest discussion around, do we want to continue to be, sort of the historically entitled suburb that suburbs were meant to be, or are we really looking to do things differently? And how will we do that with the North Shore and with Milwaukee County? So I plan to facilitate that type of discussion and make progress on it and set realistic goals accordingly, with the help of Shorewood Moving Forward, Shorewood Solidarity Network, and all of our other 15 citizen committees that are full of talented people that have been willing to give their time.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, question number 2.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I currently am serving on the village board. So I feel one of the things that I think is our most significant accomplishment just happened this year in light of the COVID crisis. Myself and Trustee Ursink were able to partner together and to lead a mask mandate within our village. We were the first in the state. We recognized the crisis that was happening around us and that we had some ability to take action and make that happen immediately. So I am really proud of that and consider that a very significant accomplishment. The other accomplishment that I think is really significant is preserving our fire station. When I started on the village board, it was slated for demolition. There was a movement and we listened to a lot of residents. We were able to save the exterior facade of the building, and we were able to include green infrastructure in that development or in that restoration project. So those are 2 things I personally am really proud of, but I also am really proud of us taking on this policing study and looking at ways that we can make equitable changes in our community. I would like to see us implement those changes and those recommendations in the future. But those are a couple of things that I'm very proud of on the current board.
Okay, thank you. Again, because there's just 2, you go first on question 3. How will you work with the community to ensure communication is open, positive, and transparent?
Thank you. I think that's a great question. We have so many methods of communicating with residents right now. We have our numerous Facebook pages. We have a wonderful magazine, Shorewood Today. We have our village manager's memo email. And truthfully, all of them collectively even don't seem like enough. There's, in my opinion, never too many ways that we can communicate with our residents. But what I think is most important is that residents understand that what my focus is listening. I want to know what every resident cares about and what is most important to them. And that, I think, is the most critical part of communication. I also believe in asking questions. As I'm connecting with residents throughout this campaign, my number one question is, what is most important to you? I want to know, I know what's important to me, but I want to know what is important to every single resident. And I also want diversity of opinion. I want to know what different people think within our village and how they would react to a certain situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anne?
Yeah. So I would break communication into two categories, and that's internal communications and external. So in terms of external and communicating with residents, I've been really always an advocate for communication and have built that, and it's only continued to grow over the past 3 or 4 years in my second term. And we have a choice, and part of that transition has been cutting down on mailings to save costs, but also for conservation purposes. We have a choice as a village board whether we increase that line item and return to more paper mailings, and that's been kind of a growing decision point. But we do have some communication channels that are in place, and we can always do more to get more people subscribed to those those electronic communication channels. I also think that communication has to do with, once we do make a decision, being really honest around, not everybody, I've had a lot of experience and not everybody agrees. And so there are always going to be the people that are happy with your decisions and always people that are not happy with your decisions. And I think being honest about and transparent about the process of how you got to the decision, what the pros are, acknowledging what the cons are, and moving forward together is really critical. And we need to do that with our community partners as well. And then, oh dang, well, I'll continue later because I didn't get to the internal communications, which is really good.
Will you go first on the next question? So, please explain what you have done in your time on the village board to make Shorewood a more affordable community. What have you done to promote affordable housing, lower taxes? Anne.
Okay. I am going to, I want to just say, as far as, no, I'll go on. Affordability, in the time that I was on the board up until April of 2020, we did not arrive at a consensus around what affordability means and what are the mechanisms to move forward with that. I did, and the other piece is that collectively as a board, we under-levied when it came time to budget. And I was really excited to learn more about that decision-making process. And I really commend Trustee Amenta for being the finance chair during those times. I think we worked really well together. I think that the board went a little too far this past year in spending down reserves and under-levying. And that's a risk that the future board will need to take on. And in terms of affordable housing, I know that's why we supported the housing study. And as far as the TIF1 extension, I am in favor of that and think that we need to work and support all of our taxing entity partners to make that a win-win for the community. And 15 seconds. So I guess what I've done, to be specific, is I have pointed out that it is important to define what affordability is, because otherwise it doesn't mean anything. And it's also important when we talk about economic development and the relationship between that and affordable housing, that the reality of accomplishing that without TIF is also very low. So those are kinds of honesty questions that I would facilitate moving forward as president.
Okay, Jessica, question number 4. Explain.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just gonna read it again. Please explain what you have done in your time on the village board to make Shorewood a more affordable community, and what have you done to promote affordable housing, lower taxes?
So taxes is one of the things that I think is most discussed, and is the thing that I have heard from residents over and over and over again. That has made it challenging for young families to stay in our community, as well as for seniors to stay in their homes. So I am proud of the budgets that we have put forth in the past 3 years, with a at or below 1% tax increase. That is something that took a lot of hard work and a lot of time and energy for the board to work together and to find ways that we could prioritize what we want to spend money on. So I also really believe that our budgets are a living moral document of what we believe in. And so I chose my votes accordingly. In regards to our past budget, we did have the opportunity to use some excess reserves to pay for capital improvements, which is something that I think was a wise decision, as those dollars were already paid in by taxpayers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, according to my schedule, I have this as the last question. Is that still correct? Last question?
Did I answer this one?
Let's do,
Answer number 4, yes.
okay, let's do 5 and 7
Okay,
and limit, yeah, let's do 5 and 7. And on 7, let's go to 1 minute for their answer for 7.
okay. All right. So Jessica, you have a question, the 5th question, and it is, do you support extending TID 1 for 1 year in support of affordable housing in Shorewood that would allow for expanded options for low-income residents, including older and disabled individuals? Or would you instead support closing TID number 1 for immediate property tax relief?
Thank you. That's such a great and incredibly relevant question. I have received countless emails about this in the last 48 hours. And to be truthfully honest, this is a decision that I have struggled with, because on the one hand, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and I know that providing tax relief to residents who already live here would be greatly beneficial. But on the other hand, we are in a really unique position to use money to provide affordable housing that we may not have been able to do in any other way. I do have a few questions that I plan to ask tomorrow night at the village board. I would like to know, how do we ensure that these units stay as affordable housing? And after there's some turnover within the building, who's going to verify the income? I also want to know what units are going to be dedicated to affordable housing. Will it be the 2-bedroom units? Will it be the 1-bedroom units? To me, it's really critical that we get families into these units so that they have the opportunity to take advantage of our wonderful school system. So it is something that I am leaning towards supporting, but not without a lot of critical thinking and not without listening to residents and replying to residents and understanding where their thought processes are. I've been truthfully humbled by the emails that I've received from residents who are in difficult financial positions, but are willing to forego the tax decrease to support affordable housing, and just goes to show what a wonderful community Shorewood really is. Thank you.
Thank you. And question number 5.
Could you repeat it, please?
Sure. Do you support extending TID 1 for 1 year in support of affordable housing in Shorewood that would allow for expanded options for low-income residents, including older and disabled individuals? Or would you instead support closing TID 1 for immediate property tax relief?
Mhm. Thank you. So I have been, I did not seek a third term. And so I finished my 7 years on the board as of April 2020, but have chosen to stay involved as an active community resident, a resident, and also as an accountability partner. And seeing that this TID 1 extension issue came up, I immediately reached out and talked to the key stakeholders involved, because due to the lack of support for TIF on the over the past 6 years on the village board, our community is not up to date on what that means, and has not had discussions with our 5 taxing entity partners. So what I did at first, I agreed that short term, given the timing of this, and what my understanding of the TIF law was around this particular clause, I was in support of closing the TID on time, to build trust around, that TID does work and it does share the burden of property taxes. And then I connected with the director of Wisconsin Fair Housing and state representatives to learn more about the issue and the specific law that had been changed in 2009. And I realized that there was a lot more integrity there. And so that the long-term benefits outweighed the short-term gains. And I think that that's a major difference between Jessica and I, is that I tend to really try to balance the short-term gains and the short-sightedness with a long-term picture of health for our community. And I've had a lot of experience doing that and come under criticism for it. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, can I interrupt? Okay, can I interrupt?
Mhm.
I would be, let's go to 7, and then let's also go to 8, so that
Okay.
we get those questions in. But I would like to say, let's keep our responses to a minute, and we want to be able to get to more questions. So we're going to take these down from 90 seconds to a minute.
That's a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so question 7, your response time is a minute, and the question is, and Anne, you are the first one to answer this question. What areas should the village consider for cost sharing of services and or equipment with other municipalities?
Okay. Well, the 2 areas that we can is, obviously our Department of Public Works and our police department are, and I guess library. I mean, when the library was built, there was a lot of discussion at that time whether to merge with Whitefish Bay. So as far as public works services, well, and there's also finance. So I guess every department can be looked at in terms of cost sharing. In my experience, there has not been a lot of interest from Whitefish Bay to share any services with us. The North Shore Health Department, I think, was a huge success in terms of a 7 community consortium. North Shore Fire Department has been a success. I think I would need to see, and I also have seen some studies and projections of what that would look like in terms of sharing a police department. And I'm open to all of that. The things that I would look for is, are we really getting our share, because we're a more densely populated area? And I'll stop because I'm getting the stop button.
Okay. Jessica, same question.
Thank you. I would like to just clarify one thing. I do have the ability to see our long-term values and not be short-sighted. I lost my first time running for office, and had the long-term goal and was able to pick up and run again the following year. But in regards to that particular question, I think some of the services that we provide is something that we could look to share snow removal, leaf collection. I think some of our tree arborist services that we provide, as well as garbage. And the reason why I'm focusing on those is all of those are very machine heavy and require expensive trucks and require expensive pieces of equipment to maintain those services at such a high level. The transition between the physical transition between Shorewood and Whitefish Bay is almost seamless. And so I think that there is an opportunity for building relationships with other surrounding communities so we can potentially and seamlessly share some services and save some costs. Thank you.
Okay. And did you answer this one?
I think I did.
Yeah, I think you did. Okay, Jessica, this will be the last question, correct? And then we'll
Yes.
go to closing statements.
Yes.
So number 8, and you have 60 minutes to answer, correct?
Let's go for 60 seconds.
Okay, yeah. We'll lose some audience if we do 60 minutes. Okay, 60 seconds. The board has completed 3 important planning studies in the past year, one on transportation and parking, one on DPW, and one on the police department. Please choose one or more significant conclusions from any of these studies and tell us how you would address each. And that goes to Jessica first.
So I think the study that I would like to focus on is the police department study. The findings were critical to the well-being of our community, as well as the way that we can lead in the Milwaukee area. So there are several findings that I would like to implement. The thing I would really like to look at is our services that we provide through our police department. I would like for us to stop answering bank calls, stop answering locksmith calls, and use that allocation to pay for a social worker that we can have at the police department, and that can respond to appropriate calls and support our village residents in an appropriate manner in that regard. The other study that I found to be incredibly important, which was the transportation and parking study. We made some pretty dramatic changes to to parking, and I am proud of those changes and would like for us to continue to implement more from that particular study. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne, question number 8. Your sound.
Mute.
Okay, I was taking a deep breath because it's only a minute. Okay. In terms of the policing study, I mean, I think the disparity, between people of color being pulled over for traffic stops is pretty glaring, and that's like, something that you've got to jump to. I know from my work in youth justice reform that data collection was not designed to tell us anything about disparities, and so I think investing in data collection is really wise if we are to be a transparent community and also a good partner with our surrounding communities on reducing racial disparities, and I'm really committed to that. In terms of transportation, I am in support of anything that increases bike and pedestrian use, and kind of the mentality of that the streets are for people to use for parking, to come to our businesses, to join our community. Our businesses can't survive with just us as customers, and so we need to do everything we can to make us an open and accessible community. And in terms of the DPW, I think cross-training is really important, but also stop.
Okay. We will now have closing statements. 60 seconds for each candidate for closing remarks, and we start with Anne.
Okay, hold on. Hold on, I have notes. I'll use my notes. Okay, maybe I don't have notes. All right, everybody. So anyway, I would love to be your next president. I've served under 2 presidents and stepped in many times on both their behalves. And when I have done that, I've received praise and appreciation from every member on the village board, in addition to committees and to the public. Facilitating is something that I'm good at and I've been dedicated to for my entire adult life. I've been vocal on issues that need to be addressed, and I've been reasonable when there's discord, and you can see that on video, and it's something that people know about me and appreciate me about me, and they have noticed since I haven't been on the board that it's lacking. I have a proven track record of stepping forward where my skills can benefit the greater community, and I've accomplished these things. I haven't done it alone, and I don't take sole credit. These are all collective wins. I will continue to do that as president, and I think you will feel and see a difference. But first, I need you to vote for me, Ann McKaig, Village Board President, on April 6th. And that's perfect timing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Jessica, your closing statement.
Thank you. I wanted to thank both the League of Women Voters and Shorewood Women's Club for organizing today. If you want to continue to move Shorewood forward, I am your candidate. I have worked hard to make change in our village. As I mentioned, I worked to preserve and upgrade rather than demolish our historic fire station and add green infrastructure. As I also mentioned earlier, I co-led the implementation of a mask mandate that was the first in our state. And at a time when we were losing so much in our community, I supported every proposed option to preserve our beloved Shorewood Farmers Market. I also supported the police study and would like to implement the majority of the recommendations, including, as I mentioned, a social worker to the police department staff. I really believe we have the opportunity to increase our community's leadership in the Milwaukee area by taking swift action and supporting change. When I am making a decision, I draw on the conversations I regularly have with residents. As I have always done, I will continue to listen to everyone and factor their thoughts into my thought process. Thank you for your vote on April 6th.
Okay. That concludes the village president portion of our forum event this afternoon. Thank you to the community for your questions, and thank you to our candidates for participating in the forum and for running for the office of village president. Thank you to each of you, Ms. Jessica Carpenter, Ms. Ann McKaig. Did I get that right, Ann McKaig?
You did, yeah.
All right, we will pause for a moment before we move on to the Shorewood School Board Candidate Forum. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Okay, I think we're live now. We will now begin our third candidate forum, the Forum for Shorewood School Board. We have 2 candidates seeking election for 1 school board position. On the ballot are Ms. Traci Clark and Ms. Ellen Eckman. Questions for this candidate forum were also submitted prior to the forum by voters in the Shorewood community. Our format will be the same as our previous forum. We will begin with 60-second opening statements, 90 seconds allowed to answer each question, and then we will end with 60-second closing remarks. We will alternate which candidate answers the questions first. You will see a sign indicating when you have 30 seconds left to speak, 15 seconds left to speak, and when you must stop. Please honor the guidelines for the forum so we may make the best use of our time and this forum opportunity. We are going a little over time, so we appreciate your patience and allowing us to get through as many really good questions as we can. We're going to begin with opening statements. The person who's going to go first is Traci Clark. In 60 seconds or less, please share your opening comments. Again, our signs will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining, 15 seconds remaining, and when you must stop. We will begin with Traci's opening statement for 60 seconds.
Hi, I'm Traci Clark, and I'm running for school board. I want to say thank you to the Shorewood Women's Club for hosting this event. The first thing I want you to know about me is that I believe in putting students first, always. We moved here for the schools and fell in love with the community. I have 2 kids at Lake Bluff. My youngest is in 4K and my oldest is in 4th grade, so I'm invested in the district. I have over 20 years of experience in education, and for the last 15 years, I've been a teacher in both online and traditional classrooms at MATC. Education is all about growth. I decided to run for school board because of the opportunity for growth in communication, accountability, and transparency, and to ensure a learning environment that is reflective of the 21st century expectations that our students face. All of these are important for rebuilding trust in the district and ensuring that today's students receive the Shorewood experience that the district is known for.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Ellen, your opening statement? You need your sound on.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. My thanks to the Shorewood Women's Club and the League of Women Voters for organizing and hosting this forum. I decided to run for a position on the Shorewood School Board because I believe in the importance of citizen involvement in local government. I want to offer my experience in education to help the district continue its tradition of excellence and to advance its commitment to equitable opportunities for all students. I bring to the school board my long involvement in education and public service. Teacher at Shorewood High School for 16 years, assistant principal at Nicolay High School for 5, professor and department chair at Marquette University, village trustee for 12 years, and a parent of 2 Shorewood High School alums, and now experiencing the schools with my grandchildren, as I am a participant in many of their activities and responsible for taking them to and from school and all the other school activities. I am ready to serve, and I have what I believe is some excellent qualifications for this position in terms of my educational experiences, my background, and my political involvement. I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
And good thing you're ready because you get the first question, Ellen. What do you see as the Shorewood School's greatest strengths, and what 2 or 3 areas do you see as places to focus on for growth?
I'm just thinking about the answer, sorry. Areas of strength. Shorewood has had a long commitment to and continued commitment to student growth, student experiences, authentic learning, its emphasis on the 21st century skills that has always been at the forefront. I think another thing besides the basic sort of liberal arts education is the strong theater arts, the music, the theater arts, music, art itself, that this is very, very much an important part of a student's education. It starts as early as the elementary schools, and by the time the student gets to the high school, it is flourishing. All one has to do is watch the bandorama to see how the children expand from their very earliest instruments to leading the orchestra and the band at the end. Areas for growth, there's always areas as schools and educational institutions look at it, we need to infuse more diverse social justice themes in our education, in our reading. We need to have more emphasis on continued, because I think the school is doing it, media literacy. Students are very good with the computer skills, or at least they get better and better, but really what the concept of media literacy. And we need to have a very heavy emphasis, I believe, on literature and reading and writing skills to help them as they move forward. Thanks.
Tracy, the strengths and areas that need growth.
We are a destination district for students and teachers. I'm from the area and I know the tradition of excellence that Shorewood is known for, and I want that experience for my children and for all children in the district and for all children that are yet to come. The relationship with the district this year, though, has changed for a lot of families, and I think that's a priority that we need to look at. The district didn't meet the needs of those families who left the district and for many of the families that chose to stay. I've talked to so many of these families and they are heartbroken to have made the decision to leave the district or to have even considered it. The district needs to rebuild trust, creating a comprehensive plan to deal with the aftermath of this year's challenges so that we continue to be the district that we are known for. And for families to feel safe coming back to school and continue to choose Shorewood schools in the future, but especially next year. We also need to expand district-wide supports to ensure a learning environment that is reflective of the 21st century expectations that our students face. And when looking at our COVID response, we also need to keep in mind that we need to have a responsible implementation of the referendum to ensure return on the community's investment. In addition, there are so many families that have considered leaving or felt isolated or not heard by the district. This includes virtual and face-to-face families alike. We need to increase student-centered decision-making, responsiveness, transparency, and move toward a communication style and structure that brings us together to repair the relationship with the district.
Okay, thank you. And Tracy, I believe you go first this time. Under the current governance model, oh, I heard something. Under the current governance model, the school board only directly interacts with the superintendent. How will you foster a climate of open communication with our teaching staff, our support staff, other administrators, and within the confines of your role as a board member?
Yes, thank you for that. I think that when we are talking about the relationship between the board and the current governance structure, it's really important that we focus on accountability. Accountability is healthy and transparency is necessary for trust. My experience is in a shared governance model, but I don't think the model of governance matters as much as how the governance model is used. I think the conversation around governance needs to focus on accountability, and the board has a responsibility to the community and the district to create a fair and transparent structure of accountability, which creates opportunities for courageous leadership, which is exactly what this moment needs. The governance structure is like a skeleton. If everything is functioning well, then it's invisible. But if something is wrong with any part of the skeleton, it's felt in every action that we take. In my leadership position as a faculty member in my 15 years of working at MATC, I also have these leadership positions that I have outside of the classroom. I've led initiatives where an effective approach for bringing the community, families, teachers, the district administration, and the board together in a Venn diagram approach, so to speak, that always puts students at the center. It's not just a value, it's a strategy for effective collaborative action. And I've had experience with this being successful in student-centered decision-making and initiatives that create a sense of urgency, purpose, and buy-in that is needed to evoke that kind of meaningful change.
Okay, Alan? Unmute.
Would you repeat the question?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's a long question. Under
That's
the
fine.
current governance model, the school board only directly interacts with the superintendent. How will you foster a climate of open communication with our teaching staff, support staff, other administrators within the confines of your role as a board member?
Okay, thanks. It's actually sort of two questions. So let me take the first question, which has to do with the coherent government model. The school board is the governance model that they're using is one that is a framework. It's used by many school boards all across Wisconsin, and I suspect by many public boards. A structure that follows the school board itself as a policy-making organization. It's actually that is the role established by the state statutes. It sets policy. Its role of the school board is to make sure that the students in the system are getting the education that is mandated by the state. And then in its job, in its role, it sets these policies and it hires a superintendent to make sure that the policies are implemented. And the superintendent goes ahead and hires the team that she or he wants to work with or can work with support and with acknowledgement from the school board. And so it sets up a system where the day-to-day work of the school is the responsibility of the superintendent and his and her team. And I think that that's an appropriate use. The school board member is to function on helping to establish the policies, but the day-to-day functioning. Now, one of the things is that you have to have open communication. And I believe that what I've seen from the school board meetings is that teachers are present at the meeting, community members are present, parents are present, and that they are listened to and heard throughout the meeting. So that is still part of the structure that the school board is using.
Okay. Ellen, you also get to go first for the next question.
Sure.
There are times when families and staff are not well informed of decisions made by the board. How would you improve the decision-making process and the communication of these decisions?
Okay, so let me answer again. It's two questions buried in. One is a question on communication. We just heard a lot about that in the other forum. Communication is important, and we have multiple ways. The school board and the school system has tremendous amount of communication through each of the schools, through each of the principals. The superintendent himself, Dr. Davis, sends out innumerable amounts of messages. And so I think it's out there. The trick is that not everybody reads everything. The other trick is not everybody is on Facebook, as we know. Young and old are not on Facebook. Sometimes it's just for political reasons, but so we have to have multiple ways. And I think the school board, from my impression, makes every effort to make sure it's messages. Now, the second part is decision making. When school board members make decisions, they make them in public, and there is votes on them. And there's lots of discussion among the school board members and lots of input from the other people that help them in the decision-making process. The school board, the school board meetings are videotaped so that people who are concerned about how decisions are made or what decisions could actually go back and watch them. But as I've observed the meetings, votes are taken, statements are made by each of the school board members, and it's a thoughtful process. And it is transparent, it's there. And for those who would like to participate, in fact, I've been very impressed by the number of people who are watching the school board meetings.
Okay. Traci? Question 4.
There's a phrase that used frequently in the district about taking a 30,000-foot view. While this is an important part of the planning process, it's also important to ask ourselves, how big does a fire need to be before you can see it if you're always at 30,000 feet? There needs to be a stronger bridge between the operational and the strategic, and a redesigned strategic plan can facilitate this as well as foster more organized communication between the superintendent and the board. Coherence governance may or may not be the root cause. I'm willing to work with CG to embed a more concrete accountability structure. If CG doesn't allow for that type of adaptability, then we do need to take a closer look at the model itself and whether or not it's right for our district. In a crisis, communication is key. An improved communication structure will help to improve clarity at all levels of the district. The district's communication to parents needs to be reflective of a proactive communication style rather than a reactive communication, and all communications need to be timely, accurate, and not excessive. The administration's communication to teachers needs to be clear. Administration needs to ensure that teachers have the information they need to feel safe and effectively field questions from parents. Parents, especially in COVID, do not want to miss information or feel like we are missing information, even if we're not. This is where communication issues can erode trust. It's important for families to feel that they are being communicated with, not marketed to, and authentic communication built on clear structure decreases confusion and fosters a sense of belonging and trust.
Okay, thank you. Traci, you will get the first crack at what actually is question number 4. And what do you see as the school district's greatest upcoming fiscal challenges, and how would you address them? Also, describe your experience with large-scale budgets like those of a school system. Traci?
We moved here for the schools, and when we did so, we did a cost benefit analysis. So we view our property taxes as tuition. I believe that a student-centered approach to the budget is needed so that services match the level of support of the community and have a direct impact on students. The schools are the anchor of the community, and we need to continue to draw young families to the district while also being mindful of the tax burden that is being created for the members of our community without children, and for seniors who don't want a tax burden that prices them out of their home and community. The school board has a moral and ethical obligation to balance the interests of all the members of the district. I work for the state, and so I'm used to unusual and multiple fund requirements. I've led student-centered equity and access initiatives that ran into budget constraints, but the budget constraints cannot impede moral imperatives of projects that are prioritized by the district. So it is possible to find a way to work within the funding constraints and structures to make projects and the budget work for student needs. I also support the recent creation of the Finance Committee and believe that is a great example of how the community's resources can be leveraged to help the district and to assist the board in making data-informed decisions. That models closely with my professional experience in a committee structure that has been leveraged to bring people together, to leverage the support of the community.
Okay, Ellen? I'll repeat it. What do you see as the school district's greatest upcoming fiscal challenges, and how would you address them? And what are your experiences with large-scale budgets?
Thanks. I would say that the first thing the school district is going to be faced with is the fiscal challenges from the impact of the expenses of COVID. COVID has had an enormous impact on schools and on communities in terms of unanticipated costs and continuing costs, real in terms of buildings and structures and materials and alternative schedules and learning models. The other fiscal challenge is going to be what happens with the state budget and how the state budget is going to be, what is it going to have for schools, what percentage it's going to have for schools, and where we're going to stand on that. Because how you build the budget depends a lot on what you get in terms of the state. And the state monies now are being talked about, and whether we get the kind of money that Governor Evers is talking about will be important. I've had experience as an administrator on budgets around schools. I've had experience certainly with a large scale budget as a village board trustee. And they are complicated and there are many pieces to them. The interdependency between the village and the village needs and the school needs. People buy homes and they expect their property taxes to pay for things, but they expect their home value to continue to grow. And the growth of that is dependent on successful schools, and the successful schools are dependent on the community. So they're very, very interdependent. And so I think the challenges of the immediate challenges of state funding for both the school district and the village will be very, very important as we build our budgets.
Okay, Ellen, you are the first one for the next question. Enrollment has dropped this year with resident families choosing to leave. What do you think the problem is? What is the problem as you see it?
I think the problem is that of families who have chosen to leave is directly related to COVID. So if I feel like I'm repeating COVID, it's because when you have 500,000 people dying in your country and you have lockdowns and you have people afraid to go out and people still not being vaccinated, you have the impact of COVID on the children, on the teachers, on the families. The isolation is everywhere. So I think what we're seeing already from the reports I've heard at the school board meetings is that families are coming back right now as the school is going into full-time for elementary and moving closer and closer to full-time for high school and in intermediate school. The response of families coming into the schools has increased remarkably, and we'll know particularly on March 15th. So I think these families had serious reasons for why they tried to find alternatives, but I don't think their idea was to leave the district. It was to find some alternatives for right now. So I think we'll see something changing. I think another question that has to be asked when we look at enrollment of schools is what is happening to the population of the village? So again, these two things are interconnected. And if the village population is declining or the village population is aging and young people aren't coming in, what can the village and the school board do together? And as a trustee, when I was on the village board, we looked at that very, very closely, and we worked with the school board to find ways to address population needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tracy?
Yes, I spoke earlier about the rebuilding of trust with the district, and I think nowhere is that more important than when we're talking about the families that have left the district and the efforts needed to invite them and welcome them back to the district. To do this, I think the district needs to include a choice between face-to-face and fully virtual models for the remainder of the pandemic. There needs to be an online structure in place to support a robust virtual delivery and a fluidity in our face-to-face model. For the remainder of the pandemic, at any time, cohorts of students or teachers could be quarantined, and the district needs to provide a structure that utilizes and embraces the effective use of technology so that teachers, students, and parents can be prepared to pivot as needed, and this creates that sense of trust. Also, we need more opportunities for live, real-time communications with the district leadership. Regular real-time Q&As that are then recorded would be a great partner and add clarity to written communications. The district is just now planning to reach out in March to families who made the heart-wrenching decision to leave the district when many left at the beginning and throughout the year. And many families that didn't leave also need to have a connection. We've talked about rebuilding trust in the district from the lens of the pandemic, but this was also the experience of many families pre-COVID as well. So we need to acknowledge that the district needs to rebuild trust with many families of color as well. And this is an opportunity.
Okay. We're going to do 2 more questions. Each one we are asking you to 3 more questions. We are doing 3 more questions. Each a minute.
We can do a minute and a half. If you all don't mind, we want to get in more questions. Let's do our 90 seconds on this
Okay.
one, and on the next 2, let's go to 60 seconds. Is that agreeable? Okay.
Yeah, just, yeah, we do not want to give the school board a short shrift. It's very important to any community. So the next question is, the first one to answer it is Traci, and this is a 90-second response. The district has opened up many more seats to open enrollment this year. What is the value of increasing open enrollment?
The value to creating open enrollment is going to help us to offset the issues that have been created by the pandemic and the loss of families to the district. Recently at the buy board between the village and the school board, the district was talking about the net response of students that have left versus the overall response of students. And we do need to focus on the overall experience of every student in our district and all the families that have left, but we also need to focus on the financial impact that this could have, not just for next year, but the next 5 years out, where the district has some serious financial challenges ahead of it. Open enrollment is one strategy that the district can use that I do support, as long as the class sizes are protected in our current environment. That needs to be something that is absolutely the parameter around our open enrollments, and not just for the current year, but when we're looking at open enrollments, we need to be planning out fiscally for the next, actually for the breadth of that student's career in the district, because that will exponentially impact the rest of the classroom teachers on each level of the district. So it's a valuable technique. I think it's something that we're going to need to utilize to help us overcome our financial challenges, but I think it needs to be constrained, and that classroom size actually absolutely needs to be the priority.
Thank you, Traci. Ellen?
Yep. Now that I remember to turn my mic on, I'm all set. Open enrollment is a tool that's designed to put students into classrooms that have space. They're never designed to increase the enrollment so much that you need additional classrooms. And Shorewood has used it over the years, open enrollment. This is the first time they feel that given population issues and classroom spaces, that they can take approximately 64 seats. That would be across the whole system in different places. There are different details on where those seats will be open, but never to create additional classrooms. Fiscally, the open enrollment student comes with financial assistance. That's how it works. They come with money. So it makes it different. The value is that if you have a classroom and you have a teacher and you have extra seats and you can put a student in there, that's very valuable. It also can serve to diversify the student population. It doesn't often. As an administrator, I didn't notice that we had additional diversity with open enrollment. We just had students that were coming from other areas. There's complications with open enrollment in terms of how the student gets to the school. And that is also an issue for the families too. So it's a very interesting tool that the state designed. It's used in different school districts more or less successfully. Depends very much on the availability of seats at the time. So I think this is wise for the school to look at it. I suspect if we go back in a few years, we would have seen that they've used it prior. So this is not the first time, nor the last time that they'll use it.
Okay, the next question, both of the next questions are long. Are we going to give each 90 seconds to respond for both of the next questions?
No, let's go. The two next questions, let's go to 60 minutes.
Okay.
67.
I said it too. It's a Sunday thing.
Yeah, it's okay. How do you feel about the administration's and current board's leadership on race and equity? As a school board member, how will you help to implement the priorities of the strategic district equity plan? And that goes to Ellen first.
Yeah, that is two questions, isn't it?
I know.
There's one question on the strategic plan
That's
around
right.
equity. I think the school board and the administration has done a remarkable job about identifying and moving forward with a strategic plan for equity work. I think they also got some support from SEED at the very early stages of this that allowed them to hire the director for equity, Sam Coleman, and now they've been able to incorporate him as the director of curriculum instruction, and a new director for equity, Shari Tucker. I think the second half of the question was the school board. I think that the school board will constantly have to look to see if the basic district equity strategic plan pieces of social justice curriculum, anti-racist pedagogy, and addressing the culture of fear, that those pieces will be addressed consistently. And the school board can have that conversation, and does have that conversation, with the superintendent, with the director of equity, the director of curriculum instruction, and all the other principals, of how are they making progress on those plans.
Okay, Tracy, how do you feel about the administration's and current board's leadership on race and equity? As a school board member, how will you help to implement the priorities of the strategic district equity plan?
I support the district's current integrated comprehensive systems for equity framework, but we know that dismantling systemic racism in our structures can take time. Our students' time with us, though, is short, and so we need to concurrently create high impact initiatives for our students to experience our work with ICS in the now. I think we can balance the ICS framework with visible student-led activities so that the impact of this work is felt by students and concurrently implemented. I'd like to see a diversity, equity, and inclusion council that brings family members and community and teachers and administrators together. It's also important for the district's diversity, equity, and inclusion goals to be woven throughout all aspects of the strategic plan, and for measurable outcomes to be attached to them so that we hold ourselves responsible for moving our intentions into action. We want to utilize data to be transparent so that we can see what's happening and work for change. And diversity, equity, inclusion is not a side project. It is fully a part of who we are, and that needs to be reflected in the district's strategic plan.
Okay, we are going to have one more question. And Tracy, that starts with you. And you have 60 seconds to respond. How would you, as a board member, want to see the board solicit teacher feedback or input regarding decisions that directly impact teaching and learning? What do you think is the best way to make sure teachers' voices are brought to the table?
During COVID, teachers have often been in the same situation as parents in searching for information from the district. Parents go to the teachers first for clarification about what's going on in the district. When teachers don't know the answer, don't know where to find the answer, and have the same sense of urgency to know the information as parents do, then it's time to call a timeout and bring all the circles to the table, because students cannot be first if we can't connect. I'm an online teacher who's navigating the current COVID virtual environment, and I'm a faculty co-leader for MATC's 21st Century Classroom project, which created training and real-time support for over 1,100 instructors during the COVID-19 online transition. I have deep concerns about the impact that the lack of involvement of teachers in the decision-making process, which needs to increase in a crisis, will have an impact, a continued impact on morale. Like I said, Shorewood is a destination district for teachers, and we need to take steps now to ensure the retention of our outstanding teachers. We're so grateful for them.
Okay, thank you. Ellen, your answer to question number 9?
Question on teacher feedback and teacher
Yes.
voices.
It's
As
teacher feedback, yes.
As a teacher in Shorewood, I can certainly, and as a teacher now still at the university, if one looks at it, it's very, teachers do have voices and they have opportunities. The administration and the school board and the other administrators make opportunities for teachers and give teachers feedback by having meetings with them, by having one-on-one. I've always advocated when I teach my principals that if they have a question, that they go see the teacher, go to the teacher's classroom. And of course, with COVID and a lot of things being disrupted, it's even more important that principals reach out. It's a pleasure to see the number of teachers who are attending the school board meeting and to hear the voice of the teachers union. And the teachers have a tremendous amount of respect, and they feel the best when they do have that respect from their principal and from their administrators. I would say that in order to, there are probably within the school many opportunities where the administration and the teachers can get together both formally on committees and informally. And that's one of the best ways to get feedback.
Okay, thank you. You guys put a lot of information in a short amount of time. So now we will have 60 seconds for each of the candidates' closing remarks. Ellen, you will be first with your closing remarks.
Okay, thank you. Well, first, thank you for the opportunity to talk with you this afternoon. I wish that I could actually see those people who are watching and actually be with them. And I'm hoping for that soon. I am uniquely qualified for this position on the Shorewood School Board. My qualifications include a Shorewood teacher, high school administrator, a university professor and leader in education, a village trustee, and a community advocate. As a professor of education, I teach future teachers and I teach school administrators. And I'm proud to say that 3 of my students are currently teachers and aspiring administrators in the Shorewood schools. And I really enjoy seeing them, or when I could see them and go in the buildings. Through my work, I meet with school administrators across the Milwaukee metropolitan area, and I am in a network of people that help and give advice on preparing future leaders and teachers and how valuable it is. In addition to my professional qualifications, I have personal experience with Shorewood schools as a parent of Shorewood alumni and a grandparent of Shorewood students. I believe I'm the right person at this time for the Shorewood School Board. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Tracy?
Thank you to the Shorewood Women's Club, everyone in the audience, and the other candidates. Our current moment has created an opportunity to embrace change and growth. This moment can propel us forward. It can help us bridge the gap between where we are and where we need to be. We want to use this moment to come together. We just need to step into it right here, right now, together. And we are so close to achieving this. We can do this. We need to, for our kids and for our community. I have over 20 years of experience in teaching and advocating for students. I have a unique perspective as a parent of 2 young children in the district, as an online and face-to-face teacher at MATC, which is a majority minority college, as a former administrator at UWM, and a proud member of the Shorewood community. If elected to serve, I will foster an environment that brings all these groups together to put students first always. If you want more information, please go to my website, tracyforshorewoodschools.com. I hope you'll consider voting for me and feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect and hear more about your perspective.
Thank you very much. That concludes the Shorewood School Board portion of our forum event this afternoon. Thank you to the community for your incredible questions, and thank you to our candidates for participating in the forum and for running for the Shorewood School Board. Thank you to each of you, Ms. Traci Clark, Ms. Ellen Eckman. That concludes our candidate forum event. The League of Women Voters reminds you that our democracy depends on citizen involvement. I trust that you all intend to vote on April 6th and hope that you will help increase voter turnout by encouraging friends to vote as well and by arranging for an absentee ballot if needed. Please remember, visit vote411.org for additional candidate information and Q&A, as well as all pertinent voting and election information. On behalf of the Shorewood Women's Club and the League of Women Voters, Milwaukee County, thank you to all the incredible candidates for taking the time to run for political office and for participating in this forum. And thanks to all of you who are viewing this important event.